coffee, 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 coffee. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Olivia and I am a mummy to two, which seems crazy. I have Felix, who's just turned two weeks ago on the 7th of Jan. We just had a little party for him. It was the best day. I had a blast. And this is my little Alessia. She's the newest addition to our family and we've become a family of 4. It feels like an official family now and she's perfect. Night and day difference to Felix. It is amazing. So today's video, what I wanted to chat to you about was Alessia. I did just do a video of my delivery story with her. And I sort of compared a little bit to how it was with Felix's and my experience this time around. So I'll leave that link for you guys below. Check it out if you're interested in how our day went when we had her. And today's video is going to be all about little Alessia. As I'm filming this, she is officially 2 months old. This is a lot longer, or later I should say, than I wanted to film it, but I'll get into why it's been a little bit crazy and I'm just doing it now. So I apologize if you can hear a whirring sound in the background. It is my fan. It is extremely hot here. I hope I'm not too dark as well because the weather is currently changing. We've just moved houses and I don't know where my lighting is. I should just buy some more. But anyways, bear with me while we get through our little video for Alessia. I was born on the 15th of November at 12:30 p.m. via an elective C-section this time. She was 3.5 kilos, which is bigger than my son, and was 50 centimeters long, which was shorter than my son. So it's interesting to see how they compare with each other. She was actually born at 38 weeks. My son was born at 40 weeks, so there's a little bit different. So she's a much bigger baby than Felix ever was at this stage. But she's a bundle of joy. She is such a content, happy baby. She sleeps great. She feeds well. We are breastfeeding. She is exclusively breastfed. She's never had a bottle or anything like that. She's a little champ. She's great. The reason why this is a little bit longer or delayed or uploading later or filming it later, I guess I should say, than I originally planned to is because little Alessia has been sick. So at 2 weeks of age she was not waking for feeds. She wasn't acting herself, extremely lethargic. Whilst I know newborns sleep all the time, this was excessive. It was very different for her. She was sick, and prior to, so 2 weeks old, so one night, late at night, she became extremely congested and miserable, just not happy. And so I was like, great, she's got a cold, we'll see how we go through the night. Maybe we'll have to go take her to the doctor in the morning or something like that. It just got worse. So yeah, she was not happy. The following afternoon, I was like, she's not waking up. I'm having to wake her up for her feeds. She wasn't really eating. She just was so like apathetic about the whole thing. She just was not interested. She was still having plenty of wet nappies and all of that, but I just knew she wasn't herself. And when your mummy instinct says something's wrong, something's wrong, and that's what happened. So my partner and my son were out for the day visiting grandparents, and I said, could you please come home? I want to take her to the doctors. She's not well. So they did come home and we waited around because she was still sleeping, and my partner was like, maybe she just needs to sleep it off, she'll wake up, she'll be better. She didn't. She just continually kept sleeping. I did keep trying to wake her. It wasn't going anywhere. She was still just as she was. So at 9 o'clock at night I decided, that's it. I'm not waiting any longer. I'm going to take her to the children's hospital, which wasn't very far from our home. Like a 10-minute drive, if that. And as soon as we got there, the triage checked her out and said, that's it, come on inside, we're going to have the doctor look at her. So, which is very different to if I've ever had to go to hospital, what my experience is like, or, you know, they don't tend to like whisk you straight on through, but they did with her. And yeah, she actually came in with a low a temperature, so she was 37.8, and for newborns they don't like them to get to 38 degrees because then it tends to say that there is this infection, they're fighting something off. It can be quite harmful to such a newborn baby. So we were like borderline, and I think that's what also concerned them. She also had very mottled skin, so it was very funny, mottled, how do you describe it? So she's quite fair as well, like my son, but it was patchy, like she had a patchy looking skin. It wasn't a rash, it was just blotchy. And again, she was there totally not responding to people, very lethargic, sleeping the whole time until they had to give her a cannula in her arm. And it's absolutely heartbreaking when they have to do it because they bend their little wrist and hold it there for ages, trying to take bloods, trying to get a cannula in. It probably was about a 15-minute experience of them really bending her wrist and trying to get blood out, and she was just beside herself. She actually was not happy at this point. She was crying and I was just getting worked up. I'm like, why are you taking so long to do this? She's obviously not happy. Like, I was a mess. It was just a really like crazy first few minutes of actually being at the hospital. Then they sort of looked at us and said, she's sick. We think she could have this, which they were thinking that she had meningitis, which is the swelling, can be the swelling on the brain. And you know, it tends to go along with the things that we're saying, but they tend to test all children under a month old or under 3 months old with them having meningitis or those sort of bacterial or viral infections. So that can be meningococcal, meningitis, things like that. They also tend for the herpes virus. So if they've been around someone who's had a cold sore, they can sort of be the same. So in my head I was freaking out, but the reason I wanted to take her to emergency was to make sure that she wasn't going to end up with whooping cough or something like that, because someone in our family who she hadn't personally been exposed to did actually have it. And I was just paranoid that other people who had been around this one person had actually been in contact with Alessia. So in my head I went in thinking she could have whooping cough. Anyways, the way they test for example, meningitis is doing a lumbar puncture, and that was just very confronting because I thought, oh my god, that's the same sort of procedure they do when you're having an epidural, where they go through the 2 vertebrae in your lower back. And it was just a very daunting experience because they were just saying all of this within half an hour of being there. She just had a really crappy experience with getting blood drawn and cannulas put in, and I just didn't go in there thinking that she'd be sick at all, but they seemed to be convinced that she was very sick, and she was, but it was just like, what? Like, oh, sorry, how can you be this sick? You're only 2 weeks old, you haven't been in contact with anyone who has been sick. My brain was rushing, and they decided, and basically they said they want to do the lumbar puncture, and I was just like, well, what do you think we need to do? Do you think she necessarily has meningitis or some other thing? And they were like, well, one of the doctors that talked to us was not really giving me like the response that I wanted. I really wanted someone to say to me, we need to do this now because of ABC. But it wasn't that way. The doctor was like, well, you can do it, but you don't have to do it. You know, we just test for children under, you know, newborns and under 3 months this way. We test them very intensely, but it's not to say that she has anything. She was just very like, she wasn't very reassuring in the moment. Like, I just wanted someone to say, yes, you need to do this. Just be very confident. And that was the thing. This doctor wasn't confident about it. So at at that point, I decided not to do the spinal, or the lumbar puncture, sorry, because they were already giving her antibiotics. So within an hour of us being at the hospital, they were pumping her for 4 different types of antibiotics. And then they said, let's do the lumbar puncture, or we should do the lumbar puncture, or however they said it to me. But they also said that if you do the lumbar puncture after having antibiotics, your results will be different because the antibiotics are already working on her system. So you're not going to get the results that you would have if she wasn't already on antibiotics. So that was another thing that made me not go down the lumbar puncture at that point in time in emergency. It was a lot. And then they said, you're going to have to stay in overnight while she has the antibiotics and while we monitor and different things like that. At this point, we had no diagnosis at all. She was very congested, not eating still, all of that. So that was crazy. That was so full on. Yeah. So we stayed in overnight in the children's hospital, and it was so sad. It broke me because it was December at this point. They had all their Christmas decorations up in the ward, in the children's ward. It was honestly heartbreaking knowing that there were kids in hospital who were really sick, and it was Christmas, and the nurses were just so happy on the ward, and like you can hear kids crying. It was a really terrible experience, but everyone was really well looked after. The nurses were amazing. It was just really sad. Like, it was such a sad experience to be in this ward. So with Alessia, we were actually in there for 5 days, I think. So she had a couple of days of antibiotics. We did eventually do the spinal. They did test her for whooping cough, which was like horrible. How they have to go in through her nose and basically extract all the gunk and build up in the very back of her sinus cavities. And she was screaming and it was horrible. The spinal was even worse. They actually said, do not be in the room. It's best that you leave and come back when it's over with, because they cry with how they have to curl the baby up and they don't like to be in that position. And it was horrible. It was so bad because you can hear her crying. I was actually outside of the procedure room, outside in the garden park area, and I could hear her crying. And it was one of the worst experiences of my life, if not the worst. Because you feel so hopeless, and all you want to do is make your kids feel okay and know that they're safe, and to not even be there in the room with her was heartbreaking. Like, it was such a heartbreaking thing. But she came back okay. As soon as I got her, she fell straight asleep for a little bit. She was just relieved to be back in my arms, and that broke my heart even more. But the procedure went well, they said, and she had a really rough night. She was in a lot of pain. She couldn't lay down on her back, and when you're putting babies to bed, you always have to put them on their back because of SIDS. She was just miserable. She had a really rough night. I had a really rough night in the hospital with her. Yeah, I did ask if they could give her some Panadol. I know that she's under a month old, but they were happy to do it because she was not handling the discomfort well. And I wouldn't even say that it helped, so I never offered her another dose of it because she struggled through the night either way. Yeah, and then basically we were discharged 5 days later, and the results were kind of a little bit inconclusive. So we decided to do the lumbar puncture once we had a doctor come in and say, we need to do this to rule out whether she has meningitis or something else, so we can get her off the antibiotics. And that was 48 hours from the time we had been in emergency. So we knew that our results from doing a lumbar puncture were going to be totally skewed and not accurate, but there's still the chance that it would show something. So after she had it, our results came back that that same day actually, some of it, not the cultures, because they take 24 hours or 48 hours as well. So it came back, and it did show that she had some elevated white blood cells in the spinal fluid, and that tends to indicate that she did have an infection, which could have been meningitis, ABCY, whatever. But her nasal test that they did came back negative for whooping cough, so that was great. That was my big concern as well. But they decided to keep her on the antibiotics, on 2 of the antibiotics, and remove her off 2 of the others. And they were just going to monitor and observe her and all of that for an extra 24 hours. And then our cultures came back and said that nothing had grown, so that was very good. But the doctor said to us that because there was those white blood cells, that the chances are that she could have definitely had one of the things they were testing her for, but she had been on such strong antibiotics that it had basically killed whatever was there. And we must have just caught it really early on, and we did. So at the same time, it was very scary because I still don't know if she had anything, or well, the fact that she could have been really sick if I left it any longer than when I had decided to call it quits and go into it. Like, oh, that whole experience is just crazy. But aside from that, we've come out of hospital. Her congestion has cleared up. They also did find that she did have the rhinovirus, so she actually did have a full-blown cold as well. And it took her 3 to 4 weeks to get rid of her congestion. It did peak again at one point, but about a month as well to get rid of the congestion and get over that cold as well. So that's kind of why I haven't done a meet my newborn video, because she has been sick, but she's much better now. She's so happy. We're just battling through the heat of summer, and she's doing really well. She's hitting all her milestones that she should be hitting. She's gone through her first leap. We're currently in her second leap. So leaps, if you follow the Wonder Weeks app, I'll link that for you guys down below as well. It's fantastic. Yeah, she's doing really well. She's getting on very well with Felix, and he's doing very well. Yeah, so she's going through her second leap at the moment, and she kind of handles them really well. She hasn't been too miserable, been too fussy. She's just really content, which is very different to how my son was, because you knew when he was going through a leap, like it bothered the heck out of him. But I remember with my son, the 3rd leap was a tough one, so we'll see what her next leap is like. But at 2 months old, she's doing plenty of tummy time. She's breastfeeding extremely well. What else is there? What else is there with you, sleepyhead? Oh, my battery's gonna die. So she's grown about 9 centimeters, so she's now 59 centimeters long. She weighs 5.5 kilos. She's 90th percentile for height and weight. Like, she's a big baby. Again, very different to Felix, who was in the 12th percentile for the longest time. And yeah, she's doing really well. She's great. She's healthy. She's happy. She sleeps like a champ. She feeds sometimes once a night, once during the night, worst case 3 times in the night. My son still wakes more than she does. So she's great. Couldn't ask for a better baby. So that's it. My battery is going to die, so I'm going to have to end it here. But I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed meeting little Alessia. I'll link her birth story basically down below if you're interested in watching it. And I'll see you guys next time. Please don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and also the little bell notification to the right hand side of the subscribe button so that you can be notified when we next upload. Thank you. I really enjoyed catching up with you guys, and we'll see you in our next video. Night night. Oh, night night, Alessia. Say bye, friends. Bye, guys.